Hi, friends. Today we're going to be looking a little bit at two passages in which Jesus talks about children. And I'm reading again from my Cultural Background Study Bible. I can't help but share some of these little gems with you all. So I just love this. Here we are in Matthew 18. I'll go ahead and read it first, and then I'll tell you a little bit about it. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me." And here's the notes that I love to share with you all. So about being the greatest in the kingdom, right? So it says Jewish teachers sometimes debated what kind of person would be greatest in the kingdom, right? And expecting Jesus the Messiah to soon establish his kingdom, the disciples' concerns here are less theoretical, right? Jewish sages praised humility, but men nevertheless often had ambition, right? So now speaking of the little child, in ancient society, it says children were powerless and often overlooked. Ancient speakers and writers typically offered powerful leaders as heroes and models for imitation. As for like little children, it says children lacked social power. They also needed to depend on their fathers or other providers for help. So and then here's the last one, sorry. And then the last one is, in my name. This is a note about whoever welcomes one in my name. It says, Jesus treats powerless children as his representatives. There's so much here to unpack, right? So, they say, who's the greatest? Who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom? We really want to know. Maybe hoping it's them, right? But then Jesus takes a real child who got a name, probably put him on his lap and said, you need to change and become like little children. And in that sense, he means to become powerless, become overlooked, right? And he said, and it says here, normally ancient speakers would refer to some kind of military figure, right? A powerful leader as the person who they need to look up to. But he's saying, you need to look up to this child, look up to children. And even today, children do have probably more power and more say maybe in the household than they did back then. But we still wouldn't go so far as to say, I need to look up to this child, right? That's an odd phrase to our ears, and I think it's supposed to be. He says, change and be like little children, right? This kind of powerless figure. But then I think what's so interesting is a note that says Jesus treats these powerless children as his representatives, right? Because at the very end, he says, whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. And that gives so much power and emphasis to the title of child, that's who Jesus chose to be his representatives in this world. And not just children, right? But he also speaks in other times of, when you serve those in need, right? That's where I am, right? But here's another example where we have children who are powerless, are his representatives. That is a very powerful thing, right? And now here we are. I'm going to skip to one more. Hang with me for one last little bit here. This is still in Matthew. This is now in Matthew 19. Then people brought this is the one we all know a little bit better. Then people brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." When he had placed his hands on them, he went on from there. right? So here's another powerful statement. Right after, just a few chapters after, he had just said that these are my representatives, you need to be like them. And now he says the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these, right? It's amazing. Now here's a note about it. It says about placing his hands on them. So a person blessed by God could lay hands on someone to pray for a blessing on them, right? But then the disciples rebuked them. This is because disciples often try to protect their teachers from distractions, right? That kind of makes sense. But Jesus rebuked them back and says, do not hinder them. And a man of God could overrule his disciple from keeping a supplicant away. But it's all about this blessing that Jesus is laying hands on them, saying the kingdom of God belongs to them, that you are my representatives, and that everyone needs to be more like you. That's amazing. When I think of children, I think, so many things. They're wild, they're gentle, they're sweet, they're silly. Children have so many qualities, right? And so I think, it's a question for me. What does he mean? Which quality are we really striving after to be more like them, right? I don't know if I know the answer, but I think it's really an interesting question to ponder. And I think it's an important thing, when you encounter children in your life this week, and when I do with my little girl and the children around me, to remember that is our call to be little children in the faith, that to see them as God's representatives. And it's a wonderful thing. Well, I hope you have a great week, and God bless.